The Krell Empire did not believe in mercy. They were a race of giants who had conquered 1,000 worlds. To them, Earth was just a small, blue marble in a quiet corner of the galaxy. They had sent their greatest weapon, the Star Eater, to destroy Earth's sun. They expected a quick explosion and a galaxy-wide broadcast of human screams. Commander Vorg sat on the bridge of the Krell flagship, the Great Conqueror. He sipped a dark liquid and stared at the massive view screen. Target in sight, his science officer reported. The Star Eater is ready. In 10 seconds, the human sun will turn into a black hole. The humans are doing nothing. They are just watching. Vorg laughed. They are paralyzed by fear. Fire the weapon. A beam of pure purple energy shot out from the Krell ship. It raced toward the center of the solar system. But then, something impossible happened. Just as the beam reached the orbit of Pluto, a thin, shimmering blue line appeared in the darkness of space. It looked like a soap bubble, but it was millions of miles wide. The purple beam hit the blue line and simply stopped. It didn't explode. It didn't bounce back. It was as if the universe had swallowed the energy whole. Report. Vorg yelled, his scales turning a pale gray. Why is the sun still there? Sir, the sensors, they are failing. The officer stammered. Something is blocking our vision, not just here, but everywhere. Suddenly, the lights on the bridge flickered. The hum of the engines died down to a whisper. On the massive screen, the stars began to vanish one by one. It wasn't that the stars were dying. It was as if someone was drawing a black curtain across the sky. Commander, a voice whispered over the emergency radio. It wasn't a Krell voice. It was a human voice, calm, cold, and terrifyingly steady. We gave the galaxy 1,000 years of peace. The human voice said, we hid our teeth. We buried our swords. We wanted to be poets and explorers, but you wanted to see the monsters of old. Suddenly, a strange sound filled the bridge. Tick, tick, tick. It sounded like an ancient clock. Every time it ticked, another Krell ship on the radar vanished. No explosions were detected. No debris was left behind. Thousands of soldiers were simply disappearing into the silence. Where are my ships? Vorg screamed into the darkness. They aren't dead, the human voice replied. They are just elsewhere. You see, Commander, you studied our physics, but you forgot to study our anger. Out of the darkness, a massive shape began to move. It wasn't made of metal. It looked like a tear in reality itself. It was a human ship, but it was larger than any moon the Krell had ever seen. The ticking sound grew louder, vibrating to the metal floors of the Krell flagship. The humans weren't attacking with fire. They were rewriting the rules of space. Welcome to the silence, the human said. You are the first to hear it. You will be the last to tell the tale. The screen went completely black. The silence was absolute. The Krell Empire was in a state of total panic. In just 1 hour, they had lost contact with their entire invasion fleet. The Great Conqueror was gone, and no one knew why. Back at the Krell military headquarters on the planet Xylos, the high generals gathered around a holographic map. Show me the enemy. General Kraz shouted, where is the human fleet? How many ships do they have? The officer at the console shook his head. Sir, the sensors show nothing. There are no engine trails, no heat signatures, and no warp jumps. It is as if the humans are moving through a different dimension. Suddenly, the hologram flickered. A small red appeared right in the middle of the Krell's most guarded shipyard. Then it vanished. A second later, a massive explosion rocked the shipyard. 1,000 Krell fighter jets were turned into scrap metal in an instant. There, fire at those coordinates. Kraz ordered. The Krell defense cannons fired thousands of plasma bolts into the empty space. They hit nothing. The space was empty. But then the ticking sound started again. It came through every speaker in the command center. Tick, tick, tick. A Krell soldier screamed as a human ship suddenly appeared, not in front of the base, but inside the docking bay. The human ship was sleek, black, and seemed to absorb all light. It didn't use doors. Instead, the very air seemed to fold, and 3 human figures stepped out. They weren't wearing heavy armor. They wore simple black suits with glowing blue visors. They are inside. Kraz roared, drawing his weapon. Kill them. The Krell guards opened fire. Their heavy laser bolts hit the humans, but the bolts passed right through them as if they were ghosts. The humans didn't even flinch. One of them raised a small silver device. Target confirmed, the human said. His voice was projected through the Krell's own translation systems. Initiating phase shift. The human pressed a button. Suddenly, the gravity in the room reversed. Krell soldiers were slammed against the ceiling. Computers and heavy crates floated into the air. The humans, however, remained firmly on the ground, walking calmly toward the main reactor. "What are you?" Kraz gasped, struggling to breathe as the air grew thin. The human leader stopped and looked at the general. Through the blue visor, Kraz could see a pair of tired, brown eyes. "We are the species that decided to stop playing by the rules," the human said. "You tried to destroy our sun. So we decided to take away your floor." With a flick of a wrist, the human placed a small disk on the reactor. "This isn't a bomb," the human explained. "It's a teleporter, but it doesn't move objects. It moves space itself." The disk glowed white. In a flash, the entire Krell shipyard, the ships, the soldiers, and the buildings was gone. It wasn't destroyed. It was simply moved to the cold, empty void between galaxies, millions of light years away from any star. The humans stepped back into their ghost ship and vanished. On the radar screens of the remaining Krell planets, thousands of their ships were disappearing every minute. The ghost fleet was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The Krell weren't fighting a war anymore. They were being deleted from the map. The Krell homeworld, Krell Prime, was the most protected place in the galaxy. It was surrounded by a massive Dyson ring and thousands of orbital defense platforms. After the loss of their shipyard, the remaining Krell leaders fled here. They believed that no ghost or phase-shifting ship could penetrate the great shield of Krell Prime. General Kraz, who had survived the shipyard attack by sheer luck, stood on the balcony of the High Palace. He looked up at the sky, expecting to see the human fleet arrive. "Let them come," Kraz hissed. "Our shield is powered by the core of the planet. Not even a god could break through it." But the humans didn't arrive in ships. The sky didn't fill with fire. Instead, the sun of the Krell system began to change color. It turned from a bright yellow to a ghostly, pale violet. "General, look at the moons," a panicked scientist shouted over the comms. Krell Prime had 3 moons. For millions of years, they had followed the same path in the sky. Now, they were moving out of orbit. They weren't falling. They were being pulled like toys on a string. The humans weren't using bombs. They were using gravity anchors. Deep in the void, hidden by their cloaking tech, human engineers were operating massive machines. They weren't aiming at the Krell soldiers. They were aiming at the gravity of the entire solar system. "They are moving the moons into a line," the scientist cried out. "If they align them, the gravitational pull will rip our planet apart. The shield won't matter if the ground under us turns to lava." The Krell leaders tried to fire their planetary eraser at the moons, but the weapon malfunctioned. The ticking sound returned, louder than ever. It wasn't coming from the radios anymore. It was vibrating through the very rocks of the planet. Tick, tick, tick. On the giant screens in the city square, an image appeared. It was a live feed from a human ship. A woman in a white uniform sat in a simple chair. She looked bored, as if she were doing a routine job, like fixing a broken pipe. "To the Krell High Council," she said calmly. "You thought space was a battlefield. We see it as a construction site. You tried to break our home, so we are simply remodeling yours." As she spoke, the first moon crashed into the second moon. There was no sound in space, but the flash of light was so bright it blinded the Krell sensors. The debris didn't fly away. It stayed in a perfect ring, glowing with heat. "Stop! We surrender." Kraz screamed at the screen. "Take our gold, take our ships. Just stop moving the stars." The woman on the screen looked at him with no emotion. "We don't want your gold. We don't want your ships. We wanted to be left alone. You forced us to wake up, and now we can't find an off switch for our anger." The third moon began to accelerate. It wasn't heading for the planet. It was heading for the Krell sun. The humans were going to use the moon as a bullet to snuff out the Krell's light forever. The great shield of Krell Prime began to crack. The atmosphere started to bleed into space. The Krell finally understood. The humans weren't just stronger. They were playing a game the Krell didn't even know existed. The Krell sun did not explode. The moon didn't hit it. Instead, just miles before impact, the moon froze in place. The gravity shifted again, and the crushing pressure on Krell Prime stopped. A heavy, terrifying silence fell over the planet. General Krause collapsed to his knees in the palace. He thought the nightmare was over. He thought the humans had shown mercy. He was wrong. A small, white shuttle descended from the clouds. It didn't have guns. It didn't have shields. It landed softly in the middle of the royal square. A single human man stepped out. He was elderly, wearing a simple suit and carrying a small briefcase. He looked like a librarian, not a conqueror. Krause and his elite guard surrounded him, their weapons shaking. "Is this the end?" Krause demanded. "Are you here to kill us?" The man looked around at the golden statues and the grand libraries of the Krell Palace. "Kill you?" "No," the man said softly. "That would be too simple. If we kill you, you become martyrs. You become a story. We are here to make sure there is no story." The man opened his briefcase and pressed a single red button. "In our history," the man explained, "humans were very good at forgetting. We lost languages, we lost cultures, and we lost gods. We realized that the most brutal thing you can do to a person is not to take their life, but to take their their identity." Suddenly, every screen on the planet began to glow. The Krell's great archive, the digital record of their 10,000-year history, began to vanish. Names of kings disappeared. Records of great battles turned into gibberish. The maps of their empire faded into white nothingness. "What are you doing?" Krause screamed, rushing toward a computer. "That is our history, our ancestors, our pride." "Your pride made you monsters," the man replied. "You use your history to justify hurting others. So we are taking away. As of this moment, the Krell Empire never existed. Your ships have no codes. Your banks have no money. Your soldiers have no orders because they don't remember who they serve." Panic broke out across the planet. Soldiers looked at their uniforms and didn't recognize the symbols on their chests. Families looked at their family trees and found only blank pages. The human virus was eating through their minds and their machines at the same time. "You are leaving us alive, but we are ghosts," Krause whispered, his eyes filling with tears. "Exactly," the man said, walking back to his shuttle. "You wanted to be the masters of stars. Now, you are just people on a rock who don't even know their own names. We aren't being cruel. We are being thorough. We are making the universe safe from you by making you forget you were ever dangerous." The shuttle lifted off, leaving the general standing in a city that felt like a stranger's house. The humans had not burned their world. They had simply erased the soul of their civilization. The news of the Krell's disappearance spread through the galaxy like a cold wind. Other alien empires, the warlike Valaks, the greedy trade lords, and the ancient starkeepers all turned their telescopes toward the Krell system. What they saw terrified them more than any explosion could. The Krell were still alive, but they were broken. Their mighty warships were drifting aimlessly in space, their crews unable to remember how to fly them. On their home world, the once proud warriors were now just simple farmers, staring at the ruins of their cities with no idea who built them. The humans had not used a single bomb to destroy the Empire. They had used a silence. Back in Earth's solar system, the shimmering blue curtain began to fade. The massive ghost ships returned to their hidden docks near Jupiter. The humans did not throw a party. They did not celebrate. They simply went back to their lives. They went back to being teachers, artists, and parents. In the center of the galaxy, the High Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. Usually, these meetings were loud and full of arguments. Today, the room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the lights. A holographic message from Earth appeared in the center of the hall. It wasn't a general or a queen. It was the same elderly man with the briefcase. "We are going back to sleep now," the man said. His voice was tired. "We have cleaned up the mess the Krell made. We have put our weapons back into the dark corners of our minds. We do not want to rule you. We do not want your planets. He looked at the leaders of 1,000 worlds, his eyes sharp. But let this be a warning. The Krell thought we were weak because we were kind. They thought we were slow because we were peaceful. They were wrong. We are peaceful because we know exactly how brutal we can be. The man leaned forward. Do not come to our system. Do not send your probes. Do not whisper our name in the dark. As far as you're concerned, Earth is a ghost story. Leave the ghosts alone, and the ghosts will leave you alone. The hologram flickered and died. From that day on, that sector of space became known as a zone of silence. No merchant ship dared to take a shortcut through it. No pirate dared to hide there. Even the most aggressive alien races changed their laws to make sure no one ever provoked the humans again. The stars fell silent because the galaxy had finally learned the brutal truth. Humans were not the masters of the galaxy, but they were the ones who kept the monsters under control. And the biggest monster of all was the one they kept locked inside themselves. The humans had returned to their quiet blue marble, waiting, hoping they would never have to remodel the stars ever again.